Ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We've made it to draft season. The draft is 48. It's got to be 48 hours from now. The time we're recording this, it's Tuesday night. As usual, we're trying to do the early Tuesday night record again before the games. I know typically we've, through the season we were doing in-game during the season, trying to throw a game on in the background. But we're going to try to sit down and watch the playoff games right now tonight because holy cow, the playoffs might actually be fun to watch. I know after the first day, a lot of blowouts. It seemed like I don't know where this was going, but last night, at least the two games we got last night were really good. We got Sixers, Knicks, final shot, DiVincenzo down to the wire. Same thing with Lakers Nuggets, Jamal Murray over Anthony Davis. The Lakers blowing a 20-point lead. We'll get more into the NBA and the playoffs with our guy Sam. And I think, I don't want to tease another guest, but another return guest potentially on the horizon. We may be talking a little more Lakers as well too, but that'll be this weekend. You guys will have to subscribe to the Rem and Sam feed, subscribe to Rem and Sam on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Instagram to catch up when me and Sam talk about the NBA playoffs this weekend. But let's see, we can actually I think ESPN was running. They just had like a live countdown to the draft. At least they had it on First Take this morning. Okay, yeah, it's not going right now. Let's see what Tankathon has for. Are we inside the 48-hour window for the NBA draft? 2 hours, 2 days, 1 hour, 16 minutes, 45, 44, 43 seconds, 42 seconds, 40 seconds away from the NFL draft. And I know the main reason we were doing these Tuesday records was to talk about the NFL draft, to go through some of those prospects. And make no mistake, that did not happen. But we'll make up for that today. We'll get to a mock draft in a little bit. I got ESPN in the background. I was going to throw something on. We got to throw something on in the background anyways. And TNT was running, what do they got? Ocean's 8 as the lead-in for tonight's playing games. I think not playoff games, excuse me. We'll skip the Ocean's 8. No disrespect to Sandra Bullock. I've never actually seen Ocean's 8. So if it's good, slide into the DMs and let us know if Ocean's 8 is a recommend. But I stopped at Ocean's 11. I mean, I can't imagine Ocean's 8 is better than Ocean's 11. It could be good. I get it could be good, but it's not going to be better than the OG. I mean, the OG is iconic. So I think we're going to go with Johnny Carson TV in the background. Do you guys even know what that means? When I say Johnny Carson, I mean only the best talk show of all time and the most famous talk show host of all time. I guess the best talk show. We're Conan O'Brien guys. At least I am but I assume the Rem and Sam pod in general is Team Conan O'Brien. But Johnny Carson TV, Conan doesn't have a whole channel designated to him yet. So when that happens, we'll throw on Conan O'Brien TV in the background before the games. But until then, Johnny Carson TV. And if you guys haven't seen the new Conan O'Brien show that's on HBO, or it's on just Max right now. So if you guys haven't seen the new Conan show on Max, highly recommend. It's not late night. He's doing like a travel show, but it's just a extended version of the travel sketches, the travel remotes. I guess he always called them remotes. The travel remotes that he used to do, he was always doing, going out to places and doing just being himself, being a funny guy. But he is really, in 40-minute episodes, they've really blown it out, pause. And it is Conan O'Brien, just peak comedy. He's just funny in any setting. So it's not like you watching the talk show, you'd be like, hey, the talk show portion is better than the remotes or whatever. Because it depends, it's always guest dependent as well, too. Like you get Conan and Norm, Conan and Bill Burr, Conan and Jeff Goldblum is another great Conan guest. You get Conan with these iconic guests. And it's just peak comedy. But the remotes as well, too, always great. Anytime he brings in Jordan Slansky's great. And the new HBO Max show, I think it's called Conan Must Go, is highly recommend. 10 out of 10, 100% on the Rem and Sam rating meter, even though we haven't cleared that with Sam yet. I'm sure Sam's got to be a Conan guy. I don't think Sam has any hard feeling towards Conan. Is Sam a Leno guy? We'll ask him this. Well, I'll DM him after this. If we find out that Sam is a Leno guy, I'm not gonna lie. Would that be the first fracture in the Rem and Sam relationship? I'm just saying I'm Team Conan. That's all. From the late night wars back in the day. Again, nothing against Leno. The cars are sick. The garages are cool, but I've always been, again, strong Team Conan guy. So, anyways, Johnny Carson TV is on in the background right now. And the guest they just had on, I'm not sure who it was. They were on with Oprah. They were doing DVR material. I mean, this is just iconic stuff, but can't beat it. We're counting down, like I said, the NBA playoff games. I don't know why I keep saying play in, but playoff games are starting in a little bit. Phoenix Timberwolves is the first game of the evening. And I guess we got 3 games last night as well, too. Nobody cared about the Cleveland Magic game that was going on. I guess that's why it was buried on NBA TV. And the Cavaliers apparently are just locked in for the playoffs and are up 2-0 on the Magic. So I get that they're the better team in the regular season, but I think Banchero, we wouldn't have mind seeing Magic Celtics in the second round, but we're already doing too much NBA. Like we said, we're going to be talking that this weekend with our guy, Sam. Today, we are going to be doing a mock draft. So by the time you guys are listening to this, if you're listening to this when it drops on Wednesday, the NFL draft is tomorrow. And I don't know if there's more. This has got to be the most misinformation that's out there. I think it's this in the election for just smoke screens and misinformation. And I don't know what's going on. And, you get looking at the board and the mock drafts and all this stuff. And like I said, we're going to do a mock draft too, but you get to looking at this stuff. And I mean, trades are going to happen. Teams are going to move around. So there was I think a week, maybe even 10 days ago, I was, again, looking at the mocks, looking at the board, reading all of the information. Make no mistake, all of the information we've been getting from the drafts for what we're going to do for the mock has been off of blogs and been off the odds. So that's what we're basing this off of. But if I was just looking at the draft board, like I said, maybe a week, 10 days ago, I was pretty confident that at least I would say the first 7 to 8, I would even say the first 9 to 10 picks, I was pretty confident of who those players are going to be. And I'm still pretty confident about, again, who those players are going to be, but I was probably a little more confident about the order even a week ago, assuming the teams all stay in their spots. But right now, with all the news in this, and this is typical draft season, you never know what to make of the information that's being put out there. What are the motives behind it? What are the teams trying to accomplish? Who is releasing the information? How reliable the source? I mean, you'll click on some tweets about, oh, the Commanders did this with Jane Daniels, and you'll click on the guy and you're like, 6,200 followers? Is this legit? Can I rely on this? How much coverage do you have for the Commanders? But like I said, we're going to try to sift through all the information. And I know there's a bunch of ways you can go with the mock draft. You can do what you think is going to happen, what should happen, what, team need, all that stuff. The NFL mocks can definitely get a little more complicated than the NBA mocks, but we're going to try to put all the pieces together here and combine the information. I get that if there's a tiebreaker situation, especially in the later half of the draft, because as you guys know, the farther down you go in a mock, the more chaos there's going to be. But I guess if we have to, like I said, it'll be a little bit of everything here for this mock draft, because I have been trying to read the blogs, follow the odds, keep track of what has been going on. Because again, you can bet the draft. So it's not just, trying to figure out who your team's going to take. You can actually, there is value in following the NFL draft. Let me pull up. I was going to pull up one of the other sports books, but we know we got to shout out our boys at DRF. If you guys are in Iowa, DRF Sportsbook, download it. The links are all in the description. It's a great sports book if you guys are looking for another option. Great promos as well, too. I know as some of the sports books continue to grow, it seems like they're always running promos, but it seems like, okay, maybe the promos weren't as good as they used to be. No, the promos on DRF are legit. But let me see what they've got here for NFL draft odds, because again, I know some of the other sports books do have a little bit more variety with some of the options that some of the options that are available. But if you guys want to shop those options, BetStamp, I'm telling you guys, the links are in the description. BetStamp is the best place to shop for lines and odds across all the sports books. If you download BetStamp, you can just connect all the sports books to the app, and it'll give you the best odds for each individual pick too, which is 6. So it's like one sports book might have the best odds for the money line, but the other sports book might have the best odds for the spread. So you can kind of sift through all that stuff as well too. and figure out the best value that way. But unfortunately, our friends over at DRF do not look like they have a loaded amount of draft props, but they do have a lot. I'm looking at the playoff odds right now. They do have a lot of playoff odds. So if you guys are interested in betting the playoffs, definitely check out our friends at DRF Sportsbook. But on some of the other sports books right now, you can go, pick the individual players for picks 1 through 10. There's some good value with the positions as well, too, with the teams could draft, which I think is an interesting thing to do, especially if you try to lay out the draft. Projecting the trades is nearly impossible, which is going to be the chaotic thing that ends up happening. And it's not just the trades up into the top 5 as well, too. Like we were talking about with Sam, it's the trades when the team moves, like the Chiefs, for example, are like a kind of a heavy trade up team right now. I think they're making some calls. The team that goes from 32 into the 20s, into the teens, something like that. Like it's just predicting how it's going to lay out is obviously impossible, but there is value. We'll try to sift through here. And I think we'll just dive right in because we'll try to go through the entire, we're doing all 7 rounds, all 200. Is it 246? No, I'm just kidding. We'll do the first round. I think, is it 2? I think I got that right. 246 for the draft is Mr. Relevant number 246. But I guess we don't even have to start with number 1 either, because number 1, the Bears, Caleb Williams, is that minus 20,000 right now for the odds? Minus 20,000. That's got to be the biggest odds for anything I've ever seen in sport. And maybe the draft is different than a game itself because, games, there's just variance, there's injuries. You never know what could happen within a game. But in order to win $1 on Caleb Williams being the number 1 overall pick right now, you have to bet $200 just to make a buck on that pick. So pretty locked in. They traded Justin Fields, generational talent. We all know Caleb Williams is going number 1. And I don't think I need to sit here and say that, like, I approve of Caleb Williams being the number 1 pick. Again, generational talent. So there's definitely no zags here for Caleb Williams on the Rem and Sam pod. If anything, the zag is the zag. Let me think. Okay, maybe the zag is not he is the generator. Because I do think if you're comparing him as a prospect to like Trevor Lawrence, he's not Luck. I will say that. If it's Caleb Williams versus Andrew Luck, and take my Colts fandom out of it, if it's Caleb Williams versus Andrew Luck, I'm still taking Luck, but it's close. And now that I'm thinking about it too, I think I might take Caleb Williams over Trevor Lawrence. I think some of the out of pocket stuff, I was looking at some of the numbers where it was like throw on the run and just the percentages that he was putting up. It's like, okay, the complete package here for Caleb Williams. If anything, it's like he is in the pocket. In the pocket, I think he is probably still the best passer in the class, but it's all you once you add just the complete total, the total stuff that he can bring to the table. It's like, yeah, he really separates himself as the number 1 quarterback. So shout out to the Bears, getting their guy, getting definitely the most hyped quarterback prospect in Bears history. We're calling him a generational talent, but they've never really been in this position. Can we pull up the Bears draftees really quick? What is the highest drafted quarterback they've ever even taken? Because I know the legacy thing for the Bears is they've never had the quarterback with the high level production, but I'm trying to think if they've even invested in that position to do that. Fields, they took with the 11th pick in the draft too. So obviously a high value pick, but fairly outside the top 10. So technically not even a top 10 draft pick. When did they pick Cutler? Because I think they might have picked him. Was he top 5? Honestly, I have no idea where Jay Cutler was picked in the draft. Let's see here. Was that 2000 and... Oh, no. Jay Cutler was a Broncos draft pick. My bad. And then he went to the Bears. And then just in terms from a season standpoint, would have put up some of the better numbers for Bears quarterback. But yeah, not drafted by the Bears. My mistake. Drafted by the Broncos. So looking through the team draftees. Okay, Cade McCown in 1999, the number 12 pick in the draft. So like we said, Fields, they took at 11. Cade McCown, they took at number 12. So still no top 10 picks here for the Bears at the quarterback position. And I don't think the where was Josh McCown taken? Was Cam McCown even the best McCown brothers? I guess we don't need to start a sibling beef here on the Rem and Sam pod. But, Jim McMahon ended up winning the Super Bowl. So definitely from a season standpoint, achieved the most of any Bears quarterback. Still the most, probably highly regarded Bears quarterback. They took Harbaugh in 87 with the 26th pick in the draft. And then they took, so Jim McMahon was a top 5 pick. So this is like, again, in a top 5 pick, he ended up winning the Super Bowl, which I know the 85 Bears defense is the thing that's going to get credited. Walter Payton at the end of his run there. There's just a lot of names and a lot of other things that, again, push McMahon down just in terms of status on that team. Even some of the statistics that McMahon was even putting up. But, you do have to be a certain level of quarterback to win the Super Bowl. It's just a fact. I know Nick Foles did it. And I think the fact that Nick Foles did it with that Eagles team, I still don't really know what happened that year. I guess you have 50 plus Super Bowls. You're going to have one random one. Joe Flacco slips in there and wins the Super Bowl as well, too. But again, you just have to be able to get to a certain level. It's a credit to Jim McMahon that he's able to do it. So, looking at the fact that he's a top 5 pick, it's kind of funny that it's like, okay, he did. I don't know if, I guess I'm not going to do the retrospective on McMahon's career and ask if he lived up to that because I just don't know. But I think the fact that he won the Super Bowl would make that worth it. Bobby Douglas, number 41 in the 1969 draft. Where did they take Sid Luckman? Because Sid Luckman, not even Jay Cutler. Sid Luckman is easily the best Bears quarterback of all time. But I think that might even go back into is that 40s? We might just have to search Sid Luckman on his own. But he's like the OG. He threw 7 touchdown passes in a game. So, he's like the OG guy. Hall of Fame quarterback. Was the 2nd overall pick in the, guess what it is real quick? 1939 NFL draft. The first pick that year, Ty Aldridge, a center. And then Sid Luckman, the quarterback, taken 2nd. Couldn't have worked out better. Even though he had a career rush yards total of 239 yards negative still, and only 14,000 pass yards. Does Sid Luckman have less career pass yards than Sabonis has points? Do we need to look up Domantas Sabonis points? I was seeing a stat that was saying that I saw a graphic on Instagram that said that Thaddeus Young has more career points than Kawhi Leonard. And I think it was in that 14,000 point range. So does Thaddeus Young have more career points than Sid Luckman has pass yards? And Sid Luckman is still the greatest Bears quarterback of all time. 10-year career. Obviously the league was different in the 40s. We understand the passing game has evolved since then. His career high in pass yards was 2,700 yards. So, Caleb Williams could definitely smash the records for the Bears quarterback position in his rookie season. I don't even think they've had a 4,000-yard passer in their careers. So could Caleb Williams get to the 4,000-yard mark in his rookie season? Because, the 17-game schedule now, if he plays all 17 games, that's 236 yards a game, and he clears 4,000 yards. Again, if he plays every game, he's going to start right away. Again, they already traded Justin Fields. So how quickly can Caleb Williams become the greatest Bears quarterback of all time? But again, Sid Luckman is in the Hall of Fame and Jim McMahon won a Super Bowl. So, Caleb Williams is going to have to still do something there in Chicago. But Caleb Williams is the obvious number one. And I know the quarterback position in general, I think there's we know quarterback are there going to be 3 quarterbacks off the board first? Are there going to be 4 quarterbacks off the board in the first 4 picks? I feel like, I think the Chargers were trying to hype up their own pick by saying the draft starts at 5, which obviously they're going to say that they're trying to build value for that pick because they want to potentially trade back and if they can collect good value for it. But I honestly think the draft does start at 2. And again, we've been following the blogs, following the odds, and the odds for the number 2 pick have been the interesting thing here. As long as well as the blogs. The blogs have been interesting too. The blogs have informed the odds. But last week, if you guys were tracking this and but last week, Drake May made a big push in the odds for that number 2 pick. And there was some really interesting stuff about the Commanders pre-draft process. They took like 30 guys to Topgolf, maybe like 20 plus guys to a Topgolf for like a draft event. And Jaden Daniels was a part of that. And apparently, I don't know what has happened out of that because the reporting is still a little bit unclear. And Jaden Daniels has since then said good things about the Commanders. And it seems like, and the odds again have shifted way back in Daniels' favor. I was checking it earlier today, and he was like minus 370. So heavy favorite still to go number 2. But I haven't like read anything super encouraging about it. And just like in general for this class, and I know we talked about this with Sam a couple weeks ago at this point, but I really like, not even just for the quarterback position, but for all the positions, I really do like probably about 20 to 25 guys in this class. I think there is a lot of really good top end talent. Now, after that, who knows? It could be total chaos. Muhammad Kamara might go in the top 40. He might go in the top 80. I just don't know. But I do really like the top end talent in this class. But I think I like it, obviously, but depending on where it goes. I mean, that's always been the thing for the NFL. But I really do think, and I don't know if it's just this year in particular, but right now, with what I'm thinking for the NFL draft, I really am valuing the nurture over the nature part of that debate, where I do think situation is super important. And obviously for the quarterbacks mostly, but there's a lot of positions in this draft where I just can't decide like who is the best guy in the class. There's 2 or 3 guys there. It's like they all kind of have a case. And for those guys, I kind of just want to see where they end up going, and whoever lands in the best situation, I think is going to be the best guy. And I think Caleb Williams would be good if he was on the Commanders. And I think, he would still put together a good career, but the Bears are a better situation for him. Obviously, it's great that he's going to be able to go to that team. It's one of the better teams to have the number 1 pick, I think, in recent history, obviously. But I think probably in the history of the draft, not very often a 7-win team gets the number 1 pick gifted to them from the year before. I mean, they're drafting number 9. So there is a big difference from the 9th pick to the first pick in the NFL draft. But for Drake May and Jaden Daniels specifically, I really do kind of like both of these guys the same. And I do think situation is going to be super important. And the Commanders and the Patriots, like we talked about with Sam, I don't know who, like what the upside is for a guy on the team in that spot. So again, Jaden Daniels is the heavy favorite right now to go there. And in a good situation, I could see him definitely being better than Drake May. But if we're talking, this is just the thing with the draft where it's like, okay, I think I could like Jaden Daniels more than Drake May. But if either of these guys end up on the Commanders, I'm probably just going to be more out than I am with the potentially where the other guy lands. I mean, Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury as the coaching staff, Quinn the coach and Kingsbury the offensive coordinator. Brian Johnson, another quarterback that got to that Super Bowl level play with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers there in the early 2000s, is the passing game coordinator and the assistant head coach as well too. So Adam Peters they brought in as the general manager. So I do like Peters, and the fact that he's from the 49ers is like, okay, maybe the new regime, can they turn things around? Do new ownership as well too? Do we just have to view this Commanders team as a new team? But it's like, okay, they still have the same roster and are still like a lot of the same bad vibes from the previous group that was there before. The offensive line is just a mess. So if Jaden Daniels is this pick, that's tough because, I mean, the size pause is obviously a concern for him. He's a very thin quarterback. And I've really done some reevaluating because of that between those two guys, where if you have to put a guy in a bad situation, I almost kind of like Drake May a little bit more. But if you have to put a guy in a good situation, I kind of like Jaden Daniels. And I don't know if that really makes sense, but I was just thinking a lot about that LSU season that Daniels just had. And if you had flipped him and Drake May for those spots, I mean, Daniels won the Heisman, and he didn't just win the Heisman. I mean, statistically, he had one of the most impressive QB seasons of all time. I mean, the highest passer rating of all time. You could argue, oh, maybe he had the most impressive statistical season of all time. But I think the Burrow season, there's some other seasons that also resulted in national championships as well, too, that have to be considered. But, if you put Drake May in that system, is he going to put up those numbers? I think Drake May would be phenomenal on LSU last year, this past season. And I think that's definitely an upgrade from the UNC situation. But I don't know if he would have done better than Daniels there. And the mobility thing from Daniels, if you can protect him and if he can protect himself as well, too, I think that's a big thing. And that's another thing that has made me reevaluate these two guys lately is I was just, and it's always a problem when you like watch a bunch of tape and then you see numbers and you're like, okay, I guess that thing I was watching on tape just went over my head. But I was seeing a bunch of numbers about Jaden Daniels under pressure, him versus Caleb Williams, and how Caleb Williams is always looking to make a play downfield and make the throw versus Jaden Daniels tuck and run will just, pick up the yards with his legs. And I think that's a valuable thing as well, too. And Jaden Daniels has elite speed for the QB position. So kind of like Lamar, it would make sense that from that aspect of the game that he would do that. But the fact that he's just, I don't want to say uncommitted to finding a play down the field, but the fact that is just not an element to his game the way it is with Caleb Williams was, like a 1% concern for me with him. But some of the progression stuff he made the progression development he made this year was super impressive for him. So big picture, I still really love Daniels. But again, if one of these guys has to be on a bad team, and the other piece of this too, going back to the Topgolf thing is everybody kind of seems to like Drake May. And as we get closer to the draft, it seems like everybody that wants to trade up for a QB wants to trade up for Drake May. I know the Vikings are that team. The Giants are throwing their name, on the blogs right now, have been throwing their name into the ring. Their hat into the ring as a team that potentially wants to trade up for Drake May. The Patriots, I think, are in the Drake May hunt as well, too. So everybody is kind of like zeroing in on this guy. And I just don't know what the Jaden Daniels hype is at this point. Again, I love Jaden Daniels, but it just doesn't seem like the NFL teams are like, we're definitely trading up for Jaden Daniels. The Commanders, again, it's not just, it doesn't feel like they're 100% set on that at this point, even though the odds reflect that he's the heavy favorite. And if everybody wants Drake May, I mean, why wouldn't the Commanders want Drake May? And I know the age thing as well, too, is a factor where you get maybe a couple more years of May. I think the age thing is a little overblown. It's like only 18 months. So it's like, when is that going to matter? Is that going to matter now, or is that going to matter when they're 30s? Like, is Drake May going to play exactly 18 months more than, Jane? Like, I just don't know, how that all works. The age thing is really that close. But I think there's a lot of factors where if you're just seeing this much hype around the league for Drake May, I would definitely not rule out Drake May going to the Commanders. But for this mock, we're going to do Jaden Daniels. And I'm like 50-50 right now on who I think the Commanders are going to take. But honestly, if we don't put Drake May, or if we don't put Jaden Daniels number 2 in this mock, it's going to be chaos, pure chaos. Then we're definitely going to have to account for trades because maybe not. Because again, all the teams want to trade up for Drake May. So I'd be curious to see if Drake May goes to the Commanders, what the trade up market is for Jaden Daniels at that point. Do the Patriots secretly value Daniels as much as Drake May, where they would just be like, yeah, he's still our guy. We're still going to sit here and take him at 3. Or if the Commanders take Drake May at 2, now do the Patriots view Jaden Daniels to the point where we go, okay, we can make a trade with a team like the Vikings. And, maybe we weren't getting the value before, but before we thought we were getting Drake May. And now the fact that it's Daniels, maybe speaking from the perspective of the team, maybe they don't value Jaden Daniels as much, and maybe they're more willing to move out of that spot for a lesser price for a team like Minnesota, Denver, the Raiders. I think that range is going to be really interesting for the QB spot this year in the draft. But since the odds are super, super heavy, Jaden Daniels right now, maybe sprinkle a little bit on Drake May, definitely. But for the purpose of the mock, we will go Jaden Daniels number 2 at the quarterback, or number 2 at the quarterback for the Commanders in this mock. But again, I just don't know what the vibes around the league are for Jaden Daniels at this point. And if Jaden Daniels is sitting there at 3 for the Patriots, I think that Minnesota, I think I have heard some stuff about Minnesota, Jaden Daniels potentially too. I heard some stuff about them being meetings, but again, even after those meetings, all of these teams are walking away going, yeah, Drake May is the guy that we want long-term to be the quarterback, to be our franchise quarterback. So I'm just curious what the Drake or the Jaden Daniels value is at this point in the league. I mean, he's obviously I think he's going to be like a top 5 pick. I don't think that that's what we're talking about, but would the Commanders just, simply just take Drake May? They're at number 2, but for the mock, we will go with Jaden Daniels. I better write this down and keep track so that way we don't double draft a guy. But Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, and if Drake May is sitting there at 3, I think that's an easy pick, which now makes me think, do we need to go back and spice it up just for the purpose of the pod? But the Patriots love Drake May, so I think easy pick, take him at 3, get that over with, get the franchise guy, and move forward with the quarterback position. But Arizona at 4. Does the draft start at 4 with Arizona? Now, the thing that I read about the Cardinals was they're going to wait till they're on the clock to make a trade. So I don't really know what that means about what they value the board. I think another thing that I've read about Arizona is they really, really love Marvin Harrison. And if you look at what they did with their, Albert Breer was pointing out as well, too, in the piece that he did for Sports Illustrated. If you look at what they did in the offseason with the receiver position, they didn't bring back Hollywood Brown. They didn't bring back Rondale Moore. They are ready to, bring in a number 1 guy to build the offense around to help out Kyler Murray. So I don't know if they're waiting for that because they think teams are going to panic once, the clock has started and it's like, okay, we got to get to 4, or some other team's going to jump up to 5. Maybe the team's already on the phone with the Chargers. Like, we got to get this move in now. And maybe they think that panic will produce extra value for that pick. But I think, the teams like the Cardinals and the Chargers are valuing those 4 and 5 picks like the teams are trading up for a franchise quarterback, which they are. But the teams that are trading up are also being like, hey, we're trading up for potentially the 3rd or 4th best, 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th. If, we'll talk about Penix. If Penix gets in the mix here at the top of the draft. But, the team trading up for the 4th best quarterback in the draft is not going to value that pick the same. The team is going, well, hey, you're getting your franchise guy, and we're going to make you pay for getting your franchise guys. So, again, for the mock, we're going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4 to the Cardinals. So Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. is our top 4. And again, if you're looking to trade up here for the Cardinals, there is some interesting draft math to look at with this team because receiver obviously is a big need that they're targeting. And Marvin Harrison, like we said, filled that spot. There is some rumblings around the league right now that certain teams have Malik Neighbors as receiver 1 on their board, but I don't think Arizona is one of those teams. But if you want to sprinkle a little bit on Malik Neighbors, number 4 to the Cardinals, I think wouldn't be a terrible bet. But the other position they were potentially looking at was offensive line. And again, I don't think they would pass on Marvin Harrison Jr. to take a guy like Joe Alt. But if they were going to trade back in those 3, top 3 receivers were off the board with Harrison, Neighbors, and Adunze, maybe then they would look at the offensive line. And if you're trading back to 11 with Minnesota, that's a really interesting pick to be at because, again, draft math, Minnesota is trading up for a quarterback. So that would be 4 quarterbacks, top 4. And then those 3 wide receivers are probably going to go before 11. So that's 7 guys. And then there's kind of like 3 to 4 consensus offensive linemen in the draft as well, too, between Alt, the Penn State kid, the Oregon State kid, and the Washington kid. I'm not going to butcher these name pronunciations, but being an 11, if the Cardinals were to trade back with Minnesota, they would be like right on the cutoff of, okay, we're still probably going to get one of the top guys at a position that we really value, as well as pick up that additional asset as well, too. So, I'm definitely in on Marvin Harrison Jr. as a top guy. Like I said earlier, I'm in on all like the top 20, 25-ish guys. I think all the receivers, put them in the right offense, they're all going to be amazing. But if you're the Cardinals, is Marvin Harrison good enough where, okay, we get Marvin Harrison, we trade back to 11, we take Fashionow out of Penn State, and then we grab another receiver at 27, but we also have that, 23 potentially as well, too, from the Vikings. We grab that receiver, we grab a corner, we grab a defensive line in the second pick. They have a bunch of picks already, too, in the draft in general from the trades that they made. So the Fashionow, the tackles versus Marvin Harrison plus the extra pick, especially if that extra pick is the 23, is a really interesting debate. But it seems like they really value Marvin Harrison and really want him there in that number 4 spot. And the guy that the Chargers seem to really value right now in the number 5 spot, the blogs are saying it's Joe Alt. The blogs are saying they're going offensive line. I know, again, Malik Neighbors might be the wide receiver 1 to some people, and the Chargers do definitely need a receiver. But I think they're going to wait on that. I think the value of getting the best offensive lineman here is obviously impressive, but bringing in Harbaugh as well too. Like, we just watched Harbaugh at Michigan for a decade. Everything that team did for the past 10 years was directly built and stemmed from what he was doing in the trenches with that team. I mean, the entire offense was built around the offensive line and the power run game and the defense as well too. I know, the Don Brown defense, the Mike McDonald defense, some stuff shifted around, but a lot of it was we can get pressure on the quarterback and leave these cornerbacks out here on an island against these individual receivers to make plays. I mean, that definitely got him in trouble, again, with the Don Brown defense in some of those early Ohio State matchups. But, I mean, Harbaugh really values the trenches, really values just a physical team. He's going to pound you the entire time. But Alt, I think, is the pick here at number 4. Now, I think Alt is the pick here at number 4 because I think that's what the Chargers draft room decides as a whole. But I would keep an eye on J.C. Latham, the tackle out of Alabama, at this number 4 spot. Let's check in on the other sports books here and see what they have. Because, again, you can bet the individual players picks 1 through 10. J.C. Latham right now has a 40. Oh, he's actually moved up a little bit. 26-1 odds to be the number 5 pick in the draft. I was going to say 40-1 because I saw that a couple of days ago, but looks like he's moving up. Maybe there is some rumblings. He's still, oh no, he is the second offensive lineman, in the odds. And Joel right now on FanDuel, 4-1 to be the number 5 pick, which I think is an outstanding value for this potential selection. You could get plus odds on Neighbors or Harrison as well, too, if you think something weird with the quarterback position is going to happen at number 4. But it seems like they want offensive line early in the draft. I'm sure they'll address receiver in the second round. And I think that is probably the right move. Protect Herbert. Again, this is what Harbaugh wants to build out for his team. But number 6 for the Giants. Again, in this mock, Malik Neighbors is still on the board. So a lot of the rumors have been the Giants have been looking at Malik Neighbors. And a lot of the rumors have been Malik Neighbors doesn't want to go to the Giants. It doesn't want to play with Daniel Jones. But it does seem like there is basically 2 guys that the Giants are going to take. They're either going to take Drake May if somehow he is just miraculously there at 6, or if they're able to trade up into the top 3 for him, or they're going to take one of the receivers with their 6. I mean, it doesn't really matter what Neighbors says. Maybe it does a little bit because in this mock as well, too, Dunze is on the board, and maybe they go with Dunze for that. I'll just say his name differently every time to hopefully I get it right. But maybe Dunze is a guy that's a little more willing to cooperate with the situation. Again, we probably know that Daniel Jones is not going to be the long-term option for the New York Giants. I mean, he got his bag. So, long-term, I think Daniel Jones is going to be fine. But in terms of playing the quarterback position for the New York Giants, I don't know if, maybe next year's the year where they replace him. But if they're not able to get Drake May this year. But besides the complaining from the receivers that have been done through the media, I think they're going to take one of them here. Should we just go with Dunze? Because the thing is, if Adunze and Neighbors are both on the board in this spot, the Giants at 6, that means the Titans are at 7. And the Titans are also a Joe Alt team. If, say Latham goes 5, a receiver goes 6, and we're looking at Joe Alt and Adunze, or Joe, let's just even say Joe Alt and Neighbors at 7 for the Titans. I think the Titans would go, again, offensive line. And now we're like, oh, holy cow, Neighbors is slid to 8. We didn't expect this to happen. But I do think the teams would value the offensive line slightly more, especially since this is such a stacked receiver class and the high-end talent for the tackles is really valued in this draft. But outside of Drake May, the Giants are going to go with the receiver. Let's just say it's Adunze, or just to mix it up a little bit. We don't want to go consensus. I know this is a very weak mixing it up, but Neighbors right now plus 170 to be number 6. Adunze 3-1. So you could get a little value there if they want to go. Potentially a little bigger receiver as well too. Pause. Get a little more size on the outside. Maybe he got the Fitzgerald comps. I know Neighbors is getting some high praise comps as well too. But we'll go Adunze off the board at 6, and then with Alt off the board, I don't think the Titans would take one of the other tackles at this spot, especially with another receiver on the board. One of these top 3, I think they would take the receiver and get that position locked down. And, the quarterbacks are obviously the most valued thing in this draft, but the receiver value is really interesting for this draft too, because it seems like everybody values the top 3, but everybody values the fact that like there is a strong top 3 and also a strong class, and maybe we could just make up for it somewhere else. So like, that's why another reason I think all these teams would take the tackle and the offensive line, the other positions over the receiver, because they're trying to trade back already and not take the receiver with that pick, potentially that high, even though, again, all these teams really value that talent, which has just seemed like a weird dynamic playing on the blocks. But Neighbors at 7. And I think Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Marvin Harrison, Joe Alt, Adunze, and Neighbors, I think that's going to be the top 7. That's definitely going to be the top 9, assuming, let's just say JJ McCarthy goes in that mix as well too. And then the Falcons at 8, maybe the other team that goes in a different direction, because right now the reports are saying that Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle out of Texas, might be the Falcons' number 1 guy. And if you look at who the Falcons have brought in on their top 30 visits, I mean, I think they're going defense with the 8th pick. And they got the quarterback position addressed in the offseason. They signed Kirk Cousins. Maybe it cost them a little too much. I don't know. Apparently, there's significant penalties on the way for the Atlanta Falcons, but they took care of the quarterback position. They don't need to try to take Penix here or try to trade up in the draft. I think they're going to go defense. It's basically corner and defensive line is what they're looking at. And they worked out Latu. They worked out Verse. They worked out Mitchell. They worked out Arnold. I mean, they worked out all the top guys. But I would kind of agree with the Falcons here. I know we didn't do the positional ranking episodes like we said we were going to, but I kind of would value the defensive tackles in this draft. I would just have those guys as better players than the edge rushers in this draft. And I love Verse. I love Latu. I love Dallas Turner. And maybe I think Latu might just be my number 1 defensive lineman in general, interior and edge rusher guys. But after Latu, I think I would just go Murphy, Newton, tied for, whoever you want to take. And that's another position where I couldn't really decide between the 2 guys. Jaden Daniels versus Drake May, Byron Murphy versus Johnny Newton out of Illinois, and Quinyon Mitchell versus Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, were the number 1 positional guys. Those were the ones that I had the most struggles with deciding who I thought was better. And again, that's why I think situation is going to be so important, the teams that they land on for these players. But I kind of have Murphy and Newton tied for that defensive tackle spot. They both bring a little bit different stuff. Murphy's just so explosive and incredibly dynamic and incredibly quick, versus Newton is just like a solid guy, pause, and just doesn't get moved backwards at all, and really holds his spot on the line, can still generate pressure from that interior line spot as well. It's good against the run. And I love Murphy's explosiveness and just the incredible athlete that he is at the defensive tackle position. But he does get knocked down a lot. There are some things with his game that he's going to need cleaned up. But if you're going to take if you're looking at Latu, you're looking at the defensive line group, and you're saying those Latu medicals, yeah, this guy Latu he retired from football, I think in high school or early college because of the medicals and because of where he was at with his health. But if you're looking at that and going, maybe we want to stay away from that, Murphy or Newton, I think is your best bet. I would take either of those guys over Verse and Turner. Me and Sam have talked about how we value that position slightly more than the edges, just a wee bit. And maybe it's just like an elite guy at that position versus elite edge rusher. Because I think maybe even like a B+. The B+ edge rushers in the league right now are definitely better than the B+ defensive tackle guys. But I think that position I would value it a little bit more. So I think Murphy, if the Falcons want to go Murphy at 8, I think that would be a great pick. It would definitely have my support. And let's see what the odds would be on that. Plus 650 right now, tied with a Dunze for the third best odds. So according to reports, and I would agree with it. Let's just go ahead and put Byron Murphy at 8 to the Falcons. Again, they could go corner back there. Either Mitchell or Arnold wouldn't be a bad pick. Would make sense for building out that defense too. But all indications say they really like Murphy. So we've got the Bears at number 9. And right now it seems like they want to trade back. And I don't know if that's because of the spot that they're in. I mean, at this point in the mock, all the 3 top receivers are off the board. So I think they would really want to get their hands on one of those top 3 receivers if possible. And the other thing I heard too was edge. But if those receivers are off the board, then they're looking to trade back. And part of that reason is too, I think because they only have 4 picks in this draft. So, I mean, they have 2 incredible picks to start. They have number 1 and number 9. But after that, they only have number 75 and number 122. So I know, they made the Sweat trade. They made a bunch of other Montez Sweat. They made a bunch of other moves as well too. Only down to 4 picks for this year's draft. Definitely want to recoup some of that. But there is also a world where it's like, hey, we could just get 2 top 10 guys. Now they're not going to trade like completely out of the first round. They're still going to get 2 first round caliber talents, and then maybe an additional couple of other picks to help solidify the team. But I don't know. You can walk away with 2 top 10 guys. Could be pretty solid. And again, if the receivers are off the board, they want to go edge versus potentially a safe option here. But I've said it time and time again. I think Latu is my number 1 edge in the class. I think he's the most ready to go. I get the medical stuff is a factor, but he just played 2 healthy seasons at UCLA, which I definitely think has to matter as well too. So this is one of these tiebreaker scenarios where I think I would just go Latu if it was me making the pick here for this team, for the Bears. Get the edge, get him and Sweat too, as a Montez Sweat as a combo on the defensive line is pretty crazy. But if they stay in this number 9 spot, I think it's Verse, it's Latu, one of those 2 guys, because I think the receivers are off the board. But if one of those receivers are still on the board, they're definitely going to get snatched up here at the number 9 pick. Now, number 9 and number 10 with the Jets, I think is where we start really getting into trade up range. So I know we talked about the Patriots, the Cardinals, the Chargers. Teams might want to look to move up there. But once we get to like the next couple of picks after this, where the Vikings at 11, if they're not able to move up, if the Patriots are just like, no, we're just taking Drake May at number 3, there's nothing you can do about it. The Cardinals are like, we're not really feeling that offer of 11, 23, and 1 first to pass on Marvin Harrison Jr. So if the Vikings have to take a quarterback at 11, the Broncos want to take a quarterback at 12, and the Raiders right now, it seemed like they're kind of locked in on Penix with the 13th pick. If you have 3 teams in a row right there that all want quarterbacks, and maybe different guys, but still, if they all want quarterbacks, this 9-10 spot is going to be important, because if the Raiders feel like they need to leap, both of those teams, if the Broncos feel like they need to leap the Vikings, if the Vikings, I guess they wouldn't need to leap anybody at that point. They would probably just wait it out. If they were worried that a team that's going to trade up to the number 10 pick, maybe they would trade up to the number 9 pick. I think we could definitely see the Bears and the Jets at 10 get a little bit of action pause about one of those teams moving up. But the Jets at 10 is another interesting one because a lot of people have Brock Bowers just slotted into this number 10 spot, and they do need another receiving threat. You'd make a lot of sense to bolster that offense. And I think everybody has him as like a consensus top 10 guy in the class, which is why I think people kind of want to see him go in that range. But if he doesn't go to the Jets here, it does get interesting for Brock Bowers because you got 3 teams there that need a quarterback. The Saints take Brock Bowers. So maybe we could see not even a slide, but I don't know if teams value the tight end position quite that highly, where the Jets also could use a little depth on the O-line. So I think they would just take the O-lineman. Again, with the top 10 pick, I think the positional value of that would be superior, and the team would just lean in that direction. And there is some talks that they really love Joe Alt. So I don't know. Maybe this is a sneaky trade-up team for Joe Alt if they want to get to like number 4. But they also like, is it Fautina from Oregon State? And they like the Washington as well, Fwanga. I know I said that wrong, but they like both those tackles. So it's going to be one of those 3. And I'm thinking it's the Oregon State kid. He gives you a little versatility. I think both those guys, both alignment, you could play at guard and tackle. But I think the Oregon State kid is a little bit more ready to go if they were to need him this year. So we will go with that number 10. And like we said, if the Vikings at number 11, we're not really doing trades here for, I guess, the Patriots nobody's really needed to even make a trade at this point. I think everybody's kind of happy with their guy, but maybe the Bears at lot 2 would try to get frisky. But the Vikings at 11, I think it's JJ. Now, like we said, the Penix momentum has definitely picked up the last couple of days. So maybe it's just Penix here with the number 11 spot. Let's see what the odds are on that. Can we get Penix at number 11? So Penix right now is, so Penix's over-under for draft position is, at the time we're recording this, 32.5. And, if it goes over, it's plus 205. Okay, I was reading that the wrong way. I was about to say, if it goes under 32.5 plus 205, we're taking that right now. But they're not going to give us free money. Minus 290 if he goes in the first round. So I don't know if there's a way. Broncos first position drafted plus 190 for a quarterback. A little bit of value there. Can we get like team to select Michael Penix? Oh, I think we can. The Broncos plus 650, or excuse me, we're looking at the Vikings. The Vikings plus 500, 5-1. I mean, that's not bad. If that's a good value. I mean, it's only plus 170 for McCarthy to go to the Vikings. So if they're not trading back and they're just sitting there at 11 going, hey, we can take McCarthy or Penix, maybe they would just go with the guy that's 5-1 and give us a little money. But we'll go with McCarthy's, since that's the guy. All the rumors are, that's the guy he's being pushed toward, the team he's being pushed toward. But the Broncos at 12. Now, speaking of Michael Penix momentum, I haven't really heard any Michael Penix momentum around the Broncos, which is really interesting. They need a quarterback. I think there's been some McCarthy conversations for this team. But again, I have not read anything that says like, oh yeah, the Broncos are making a move to get Penix. And I've read really conflicting stuff too about whether or not they're going to, I read one headline, one report that said they're going to mortgage the future for a quarterback. And then read one thing that said the Broncos are probably just going to try to stay put. And, they're not going to try to give off too many picks. They just did that for a guy. And the Zach Wilson thing just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because I don't know why you want Zach Wilson, but it also doesn't make sense because if they're going to make a move to get a quarterback, why are we making this other side move where we're giving up, we're not giving up an asset, but why are we bringing in another guy to the room? And, me and Fataport have talked about, we kind of like some of the stuff that Zach Wilson, he flashed like a couple of times in some of those games. And we thought that there were some signs of life with what he could do. But I just don't know if you're a team, how you're dogging yourselves into making that. But, number 4 or 2 overall pick in the draft, I still have high hopes for Zach Wilson. we'll see what happens with the Zach Wilson experiment in Denver. But the back-to-back Wilson quarterback trades is kind of crazy, going for Russell and then going for Zach. But again, I haven't really heard anything about Penix to the Broncos, so I don't know if this mock, if we can do that. And if we're saying, okay, they're not trading up for a quarterback and they're not taking a quarterback, there's just no quarterback that they like left at 12, then, they could go O-line, they could go defensive line. They definitely have a need there, but I kind of think I was kind of leaning corner for the Broncos. And I don't know if that would, get Fataport mad, but the Broncos just need a lot of stuff. And they already have Pat Surtain at one corner spot. I, go, oh, we don't need a corner. We have Surtain. But if you get another guy across from him, that was a real weakness for the team last year. And I think at least if you had a strength, if you were the Broncos, where it's like, okay, at least we have a couple of good guys in the secondary, I think that's a little bit more foundational than just try to chuck a random piece in there and make it work. So I kind of am leaning toward Arnold as my number one cornerback for the class. I really love Mitchell as well, too. I love a lot of the corners in this class, but I also love Cooper DeJean. And one of the reasons I love DeJean is because of his positional versatility. And Arnold, he's not being branded as that guy. I mean, he's going to go into the league. He's going to play corner. That's probably what you're going to want him to do and what he's going to want to do. But he did make the transition from safety at Alabama. So, at least he has experience with positional versatility. So I think that separated me a little bit from him and Mitchell. And Mitchell as well, too, just has kind of the same physicality. Like, you probably could just make the move with Mitchell over to safety and make it work, especially in college, especially at Toledo. But I think I would lean Arnold number one. Just some of the press man stuff that he was doing as well, too. Super impressive. So let's just give the Broncos a solid secondary. Arnold off the board at 12 is, I don't know if that's realistic. I honestly think we could see the cornerback slide a little bit. I would even say I wouldn't be shocked if we didn't see a cornerback in the top 15 or 16. I think the Jags at 17, we'll get to them. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Jags were the first team to take a quarterback in the draft. Just again, because I think teams get 5 quarterbacks if Penix goes in the top 15, and then potentially 5 offensive linemen. I mean, you're already at 12 guys. So 3 receivers, we're at 13 guys. That's 13 picks right there between 3 positions. And then a defensive lineman or 2. I think it would just be really easy for the corners to slide. But Arnold in this mock, we'll mix it up a little bit. The Raiders at 13, again, zeroing in on Penix. So if Penix is here, let's just pencil in Penix for the number 13 pick. Now, the other guy I think they were looking at was Fashionow from the Raiders. So if another team gets really aggressive and moves up for Penix, because the other Penix team that I'm reading right now is the New England Patriots. Do the New England Patriots trade back and then trade up a little bit, or do they just trade back and take Penix a couple picks? And then people thought they might be the sneaky Penix team right now. But if he's on the board at 13, I think he's going to go to the Raiders. So let's see what that is. Plus 300 for Penix to go to the Raiders, and the Raiders to draft a quarterback first for, position that the Raiders draft first. Quarterback plus 380. So, I mean, we're doing the work of BetStamp for you. This is what BetStamp would do. It would just say, hey, we're just going to do all the work for you and give you the best odds, give you the best value for what you want. But I guess you get a little bit of extra juice if you pick the Raiders to just take a quarterback. But we'll pencil in Penix. The Saints at 14 are, I don't know if they're going to stay at 14, if they're going to trade up, they're going to trade down. I just think Mickey Loomis wants to make a trade. This guy trades every year. It's just in his DNA to trade in the draft. Again, I don't know if he's going up or down. I don't even think he knows at this point, but he wants to do something. And offensive line seems to be like the biggest need. I was hearing a little bit that they're trying to move up into the top 10. I keep saying here, I read that I just keep talking about it. If they want to move up into the top 10, it's going to be for an offensive lineman. So if they're sitting there at 14 and Fashionow's on the board and the Washington kid and Latham and Mims as well, too, who I think could be really good. I mean, they have a lot of choices. They could also go defensive line. I think, like I said, I would just take Newton over Verse, but they could potentially go verse as well. And Newton would be interesting because they already have Chase. They signed Chase Young. They already have Carl Granderson there, who is like a sneaky good guy. So could help round out that whole unit. But they are looking at offensive linemen. They need some positional versatility. They don't, not totally certain what the future is of the tackle position there for the team going forward. But I think that the Saints would lean. Is this the point of the mock where it's like, okay, what is going to happen? Again, I was writing down. I should actually pull up a mock simulator and try to keep this thing tracked. But I think they'll go with the Washington kid. I was going to say, do we go Latham? Maybe, we might pivot here and go Latham. I think there is some Latham hype. I think there's some Mims hype as well, too, that is starting because of this draft. But I think if they need a tackle as well, too, Latham is definitely more the solidified at the tackle position going forward. So, we need to mix it up a little bit. Let's go Latham as the number 14 pick in the draft. So I don't think you can bet that pick individually. And the Saints take an offensive lineman minus 400 in the draft right now. I mean, like I said, they kind of need it bad. So wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction they went. So that leaves our team on the board at 15, the Indianapolis Colts. Again, if Brock Bowers doesn't go to the Jets at 10, I think there's a very good chance that he is on the board at 15 for Indy. We need a receiver. And maybe Brock Bowers is just that fix. We also need a cornerback. Quinyon Mitchell is still on the board. If Fashional was still on the board at this point, too, I wouldn't be totally against taking him at this point. I know our offensive line is kind of set, but you can never use too many offensive linemen. But if Brock Bowers is on the board at 15 for the Colts, I kind of think we just have to do it. And I love Mitchell. The corner position is really a position in need for this team, but we do also have Juju Brents on a second year. We've got, Kenny Moore returning as the slot corner, just signed him to a contract extension. So I think in the second round, maybe we look at a guy like TJ Tampa, who I really like in the second round, if we end up going offense here early. But if Bowers is on the board, that's just a hard guy to pass up on if he's available. But that leaves Seattle at 16. And this is another sneaky QB team. Oh, wait a second. We've got to queue up Suns T-Wolves. It's about to start. Seattle at 16 really seems to like their guy, Sam Howell. They traded for Sam Howell in the offseason from the Commanders. And all the reports out of the camp right now are they're kind of impressed. And I know, again, this is a sneaky quarterback team, but I think we see another lineman go. It could be offense, could be defense. They could use a little bit of help on both. And Newton is still on the board at this point, as well as Turner and as well as Verse. Yeah, let's actually pull up here a mock draft simulator. Shout out to our friends at NFL Draft Buzz. I guess it's not an official friendship because we've never actually talked to them, but shout out. I definitely used their website a lot in this draft season, just the list of names, trying to go through the guys, get everything sorted. And they have there's a lot of mock draft simulators out there, but yeah, I don't think anyone is worse than the other. But shout out to our friends at NFL Draft Buzz. So if the Seahawks are at 16, again, we have some very, very juicy options. Okay, just give me a second. I'm trying to catch up here on my mock draft simulation. I think I'm going out of order, but we don't need to be in order because I have the order written down, tracked out. So I think, again, the top 15 guys, maybe Arnold is a little bit of a reach, maybe Latham as well, too. But I honestly kind of think Latham is going to be a top 15 guy. I think the NFL really likes him. I mean, again, the Raiders like Fash now, so I don't think they're going to reach on him there. But with Seattle on the board at 16, We still have the Washington kid on the board. So yeah, let's just go with him. Hometown kid, give you some interior offensive line help because I think you can kick him into guard. And I think if you need to, move him back out to tackle. And I think he'll do just fine. But that leaves Quinyon Mitchell on the board for the Jags at 17. Like I said, they do need a corner. And they were also potentially going to be aggressive for looking at a receiver. Again, just a bunch of these teams really like those top 3 receivers. Like a bunch of these teams in, the teens and in the back half of the draft that would potentially want to trade up. The Jags are, I think, one of those. But at this spot in the draft, with Quinyon Mitchell still on the board, I think they're very, very happy to get some secondary help. And I think they would go, oh, yeah, we got our number 1 guy at that position in our spot. So 18 to the Bengals. I mean, Johnny Newton is still on the board. I think this guy's just got to go at this point. They need the defensive line help anyways. Maybe they could use a little secondary bolstering. I mean, Cooper DeJean is on the board. I thought Cooper DeJean would be an interesting Bengals guy. Yeah, I just love Cooper DeJean. And Brian Thomas as well, too. If long-term they want to try to get another receiver, I know the T. Higgins run in Cincinnati seems to have a clock on it, especially since they requested a trade. But I think if Johnny Newton is on the board, I think our boys got to go. And that means that in this mock, Verse and Turner are slipping into the, basically the 20s, which just saying that doesn't seem like it would happen. But again, as we've laid it out here, I think the teams are really going to value the O-line. We're going to see a bunch of quarterbacks. I think Penix is, I would say I'm 70-30 that Penix is going to go in the top 15. And 70-30 meaning 70%. Yes. I think we get, corner's going to sneak in there, and then we're going to get Byron Murphy as well, too. I think definitely goes. But the Rams at 19 are, good luck trying to replace Aaron Donald. Basically impossible. They need a little defensive line help. And the fact that Verse and Turner are still there, I think is good for the Rams. I think, if they were this another Johnny Newton team, I don't think he's going to slide out of the top 20s at this point. I think, there is some medical stuff with him that I was reading, but I think all in all, he's pretty okay. Now, the Rams do have Byron Young, who I like as, kind of that outside linebackery thing. So do they just go Dallas Turner to straight up compliment him, or do they go Verse? I kind of like Verse between the two personally. I just think there's a little more overallness to his game. I like a guy that can play with his hand on the ground a little bit. And he gives me Kayvon Thibodeau vibes. I know they're not really even the same kind of play. I think Verse a little better against the run, but I think he can be that level of pass rusher. I'm talking about Kayvon Thibodeau. Kayvon Thibodeau was like double-digit sacks this year. So I know he's not like at his full potential yet, but you're getting this guy with the 19th pick in the draft. I really like it. The Steelers at 18, we're just going to go ahead and put Amarius Mims here, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. That's been a very, very common team player combination for this draft process. And I really like Mims. So I think would be a good pick if that's the direction they want to go to help bolster their offensive line. The Dolphins at 21, this is where things could get really crazy. We're outside the top 20, folks. We're in the home stretch. We'll blitz through these last dozen or so picks, but 21 with the Dolphins. I read something that said they were looking at Xavier Worthy, the receiver out of Texas. So here, we'll detour quick. Let's check the odds. Miami to take a receiver first, 12-1. 12-1. We're putting that one in the bet slip right now. Because again, if that Xavier Worthy thing is true, they were looking for not just to bolster their offense, but there was like, hey, some long-term, do we have a guy that could step in and replace Tyreek Hill if we need him to? Again, just long-term stuff. So maybe that is the wild card pick here, but they could also go interior offensive line. I know Graham Barton is a very popular pick in this spot. Maybe they go Jackson Powers Johnson and just not play him, play him at guard or, figure that out for him. But let's go. I kind of want to do Worthy in this mock just for the fun of it, but because the thing is, there's going to be picks that we can't predict. So I want to go Graham Barton here. I mean, the thing, you got to protect Tua. Come on. What are we doing? We got to protect Tua. Let's just take the guard and build up that offensive line. Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 offensive linemen in the top 21 picks? A third of the draft at this point has been offensive linemen and quarterbacks. It's just the important positions, folks. The Eagles at 22, another team that's trying to trade up. They're looking for secondary help, but I'm pretty sure that Howie Roseman is going to value positional value versus just filling a team need. So, again, at this point, the top 2 corners are off the board. The top offensive linemen are off the board. I think if one of those linemen slid to the Eagles, or if they traded up, that would be in play. We've got Verse off the board as well, too. But we've also got Turner. Somehow Dallas Turner is still on the board at 22. The Eagles, if this is me, I'm choosing right now between Dallas Turner and one of the quarterbacks. Kool-Aid McKinstry is still on the board. Cooper DeJean is still on the board as well, too, if we want to go in that direction. And the thing is, like, they still have Bradbury and Darius Slay there. So I know they need a corner because the corners didn't play well this year, but those are still like 2 name value guys. So DeJean gives you a little positional versatility there. Otherwise, we're looking at Nate Wiggins. We're looking at Kool-Aid McKinstry, where, I mean, we could just put DeJean at safety if we needed to. He could be like we could move one of the other corners to nickel corner and play him on the outside. Definitely could really bolster that Eagles defense. But if Dallas Turner is on the board at this point, they didn't lose Hassan Reddick. They traded him for Bryce Huff. They still have Josh Sweat there. But I think, again, they kind of would just go with the positional value, best value at 22. So let's just get Turner off the board for the Eagles. I don't know if that makes the Eagles fans upset not getting your cornerback, but let's see if they pick before the Colts in the second round, because make no mistake, I really want TJ Tampa in the second round. If the Colts are not able, or if we just, Brock Bowers is there and we don't take a corner in the first round, TJ Tampa is my second round guy. And I think the Falcons are in the 40s right before the Colts. Again, they're looking, the 2 positions they need are edge and corner. So if they take, or lineman and corner, defensive lineman and corner. So if they take defensive lineman early in the draft, they could definitely sneak in and grab TJ Tampa before the Colts do in that spot. I'm seeing a lot of corners mock to the Panthers as well, too, earlier in the draft. But we've got the Eagles at 50 and the Colts at 46. So maybe the Eagles trade up in the second round for a corner. But I mean, I don't think you can pass on Dallas Turner if he's sitting there at 22. So we've got the Vikings on the board at 23. They already took their quarterback, McCarthy. We could give him a little offensive line help. We could go. Brian Thomas is still on the board. We just take another receiver and get crazy. I think they also go corner. And I think we go. Again, I really love DeJean, but I do also think Kool-Aid McKinstry is just going to be really good. I think he gives me like real Joey Porter Jr. vibes of this guy was just super solid in college all the way through, super solid in the draft process. And maybe he doesn't have like the high end speed, but he's just going to be super solid in the NFL. So let's go Kool-Aid McKinstry at 23. Or do we go Cooper DeJean? I should have this laid out beforehand. But I just like DeJean, the player, a little bit more. But I think if you just need like, hey, maybe McKinstry is not the long-term cornerback one, and it is a lot to ask, like, hey, can you be a rookie and just be our cornerback one? But I think he would hold up a little bit better in that spot than DeJean, and maybe a little bit better than Nate Wiggins as well, too. So should we do a little one quick last Google search on Kool-Aid McKinstry draft buzz just to see what the vibe is? Because, again, he's another guy where the vibes are just, they're not bad, obviously. I think everybody, again, agrees that he's going to be really good, but he's not viewed in that consensus Kool-Aid McKinstry, solid prospect kind of guy. But, and I don't think there's like a super team. There's like a team that's like super buzzy with their Kool-Aid McKinstry attachments. But I think for the Vikings in the spot, I think he could make a lot of sense. And I really value what he did at Alabama. So we'll go with Kool-Aid in the top 25, number 23 to the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings fans, don't get mad. The Cowboys at 23 are wanting to cause chaos. I think they're actually wanting offensive linemen. So I was looking at Latham at this spot if he was able to make it here somehow. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe Jordan Morgan, Tyler Guyton as well too, but I do think that they kind of just want to take the most exciting player available. And to me, that is Brian Thomas. So we just go Brian Thomas here at 24. I think there has been some real Jordan Morgan buzz just about him being sneaking into that back half of the first round. Guyton as well too. Let's just take Guyton here. I think the league really likes Guyton, and the tackle spot is something the Cowboys really need. And I think this perfectly puts Cooper DeJean on the Packers at 25. Again, you can blame it safety, you can blame it corner, you can blame wherever you want. But next to Jair Alexander as well, where he doesn't have to be the number one guy, perfect spot for him. They could definitely use some edge help. And I think offensive line as well too is super important that the Packers get that button down. Maybe Connor Beebe go guard and get the interior solidified. Or again, maybe Jordan Morgan definitely gets picked here. But I just love DeJean, and I think the Packers pick defense in the first round every year. So why change this year when a talent like DeJean is on the board? We've got the Bucks at 26. Bo Nix? Do we just do it? No, they just signed Baker Mayfield. So I don't think they're going to take a quarterback here at 26. They could also use a corner because they just traded Carlton Davis. Funny how that works. Little offensive line help. Maybe do we go Brian Thomas here for the Bucks? I've kind of had Chop Robinson pegged in this spot for a little bit. They've drafted defensive line 3 years in a row, and they also took Yaya Diaby in the third round last year. So they've really invested in that, but I think they need to continue doing it. And I don't know if I would take a tackle here. And, I like Chop Robinson's explosiveness and his athletic ability. And hopefully the Bucs fans don't get mad that that's who they just took. But speaking of Brian Thomas, the Cardinals on the board at 27. Again, no trades if this is just where they're at. And they've taken Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. My dream draft for the Cardinals is kind of just take 2 receivers. What if they just took Brian Thomas and Marvin Harrison in the first round? It'd be like, okay, we have Kyler Murray. We're still going to be lacking in these other positions. We'll try to fill out the offensive line in the rest of the draft. But holy cow, our offense is going to be powerful. Don't get mad, Cardinals fans. You're getting Brian Thomas. No, they also need the tackle help as well too. So, or the general offensive line help. I think there's no way the edges, I think, slipped this far in the draft that they would go. Man, Brian Thomas is not going to last till 27. Somebody's going to get up there and scoop him up. So that kind of positional value. Lock it in, Cardinals. Your offense is going to be super explosive this year. Take Kyler Murray early in fantasy with Thomas and 2 regular receivers, though. We'll be curious to see how that works. Unfortunately, the Bills were wanting one of those receivers at 28. Didn't get it. I think the Chiefs at 32 were wanting those receivers as well. If they don't go receiver, I think defensive line is definitely an option. Corner, maybe they could definitely get some corner help. But I'm also hearing some Adonai Mitchell buzz in the first round. So if Brian Thomas just off the board at 28 and the Bills are on the clock, let's just go Adonai Mitchell. And I know Xavier Worthy is still on the board. We didn't end up picking him, the Dolphins, at 20, but I think they would go with the taller, bigger receiver at that spot there, especially without Diggs, needing a true wide receiver one going forward. Let's go Nate Wiggins to the Lions at 29. They need a little secondary boost. And I think, I don't know if this is necessarily best player available, but man, Nate Wiggins is a baller. And if he could somehow find a way to put on 20 to 15 pounds. 29 would definitely be a steal for him. But maybe there's just like some slot corner stuff with him that they do. And I just think some of the pass rushes that they have and the overall roster, the lines are good. Nate Wiggins is a good player. This is a good pick. The Ravens at 30. There's only a couple of picks left. And I think they're another team that also, I don't want to say desperately needs a receiver, but are definitely looking at that. And if Mitchell is off the board, we could go Worthy. Do we go 3 receivers and 4 picks? I don't think the Ravens would do that. The Ravens are another positional value team. I think they would try to get good value at that spot. But I don't know if that's in an edge guy. I think they could sneaky be an edge team as well, too. I don't know if they're a corner team. Ooh, the Ravens. Why are the Ravens stumping me for their pick? I feel like we should just go receiver. Do we just go Xavier Worthy? But can we do, if you're the Ravens, can you have Xavier Worthy and Zay Flowers both out there? Can you have 2 fantastic receivers on the field at once? Is what I'm asking. They're both just smaller guys. So you get Mark Andrews as well, too. And I know Sam has really been eyeing Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs at 32, but screw it. We had fun with Brian Thomas and the Cardinals earlier at 27. Let's go Xavier Worthy at 30. For the Baltimore Ravens, we'll just go insane speed, insane playmaking, and Mark Andrews will be the size, downfield, pause, all that stuff that we need from that element of the offense. The Niners are probably going to go offensive line. So I think we're probably going to get a little back-to-back offensive line run here with the Niners at 32. And now that Xavier Worthy is off the board, I think the Chiefs would also go with a lineman. That is their other big position in need. So, you got Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, who I really like, Lad McConkey. You've got Ricky Pearsall is another guy that people are kind of looking for top of the second round. Yeah, I think I really like Brendan Rice as well too, Jermaine Burton, but I don't think those guys are getting that kind of hype. Maybe Troy Franklin sneaks up there a little bit. I really like Polk too as well, but maybe McConkey at 30 for the Ravens, but I think we like Worthy there. And for offensive linemen, let's go with the BYU kid, Kingsley Suimatia. I know I just butchered that. My apologies, but you are going to San Francisco 49ers at number 31, and we'll just go Jordan Morgan, the tackle from Arizona, to the Chiefs at 32. Though, again, I think if the Chiefs somehow manage to get Brian Thomas, then just go ahead and mark down the 3-peat, because that would be insane. In the league, I love Mahomes. I love the Chiefs. Sam, I mean, I'm not rooting against you, buddy. I want the best for if the Colts can't win and I can't be happy because the Colts win the Super Bowl, I mean, I want my guy Sam to be happy because the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. That would be the next best thing. But the league cannot let Brian Thomas and Pat Mahomes play together. That would just be too crazy. Even a guy like Xavier, just any of these guys, Xavier Legette, Xavier Worthy, the league could not let Mahomes. Does the league just have to ban Mahomes? Is he too good at this point? Is it unfair that the Chiefs have Pat Mahomes? Will it be unfair that the Colts have Anthony Richardson? I don't know. The man looks fantastic, but that is the first round of the NFL draft. For round number 2, stay tuned for part 2. Well, 7-parter. Do we just do the whole thing? Pause? No, we won't. But like I said, TJ Tampa, I really like. Well, we won't turn this into a sleepers edition as well, too. I think we've put you guys through enough. But Minnesota, currently in the lead versus Phoenix. First quarter, a little more than halfway through at this point. And I know that Phoenix entered the series as the favorite. But me and Sam were kind of like, I don't know how Minnesota can be the better team in the regular season and then all of a sudden not be favored in the playoffs. But it looks like Minnesota is living up to their regular season record. So thank you guys for listening. I'm going to go ahead and watch the rest of these games and hope that they were as good as last night's games. Thank you guys for listening. Follow Rem and Sam on the social platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We're out there. Rem and Sam podcast. Again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for staying tuned, and be back this weekend when me and Sam, we're going to have a lot to talk about. Recapping the draft. We've got, like I said, a guest, NBA playoffs, a week of NBA playoffs, a week of insane games. You guys are just going to have to come back for the next episode. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.